To begin weaving with our cardboard loom, first we have to set up our loom and create the cuts which will hold the warp string that we're going to weave on. You're going to need a pencil to draw and a ruler or some kind of straight edge that you can line up a couple of the dots and connect them. If you have the template at home, you can use the template to mark off the top of your cardboard so that you don't need to mark with a ruler. What we're going to be doing is starting a 1/2 inch in from the outside. So if I use my ruler, I can see that this template follows a 1/2 inch in, starts my first dot, and then after that, there's a mark every 1/4 inch all the way till I get to the 4.5 inch mark, and then I'm going to stop there. And these directions are written right on the side of your template paper if you need to refer to them as well. So you're going to be using a pencil for this. I'm going to use a marker for the video purposes because it will show up better on the camera, but you're going to be using a pencil. That way, if you mess up, you can go back and erase and fix it and not have a bunch of confusing lines. So you're going to line up your cardboard square with the edge of the template paper and the top edge of the cardboard right up against the dotted lines. And you're going to simply start by making a little mark at each one of those 1/4 inch marks. This is going to help you figure out where those tabs are going to get cut. And again, you're going to stop when you get to the end. That's your 4.5 inch mark. Now I'm going to put a little star here. This is going to help me tell which corners are which when I'm working. And a little triangle over on this side. I'm going to do the same thing for the bottom of the loom. So now I'm going to take my cardboard, slide that edge up until the bottom edge of my cardboard lines up with the bottom of my template. And I'm going to make my marks. One at each 1/4 inch mark. All the way till I make the 4.5 inch. I'll put my little square down here and a circle to mark this corner. Once I have my 1/4 inch marks marked across the top and the bottom, I'm then going to take my cardboard loom and I'm going to line the right side up so that the triangle and the square line up right alongside the triangle and the square on my template paper. And I'm going to mark this 1/2 inch mark down. So I'm marking this line that goes right across here. And I'm going to do the same thing on the bottom without moving my cardboard and mark that 1/2 inch mark. I'm then going to do the same thing on the left side of my cardboard. So lining my cardboard up with that bottom line on my template, I'm going to mark the 2 marks there. Once I have those marked, I don't need my template right now. I'm going to use my ruler, or if you have a straight edge, some kind of thicker piece of cardboard or something that you can line up against the edge just to connect the dots. You're going to connect the dot that's underneath the star and the triangle, and I've turned my cardboard sideways so that it's easier for me to draw. And I'm going to connect those 2 dots from my star to my triangle. I'm also going to do the same thing on the bottom. So once again, I'm going to turn this piece to make it easier for me to draw. And from square to circle, connect those 2 lines. Now I'm going to extend my lines until they touch. So once again, I'm going to use my ruler and I'm going to line up my first 1/4 inch mark and my bottom 1/4 inch mark. And I'm going to extend those little dots until they touch that line I just drew. And I'm going to continue this, lining up the top 1/4 inch and the bottom 1/4 inch, and then extending that line until it reaches the horizontal lines I just drew. And I'm going to continue that all the way down my loom. and then stop when you get to the end. So you should have 2 little 1/2 inch boxes on the ends of each one of those. Star in the top corner on the left and a triangle in the top corner on the right. Circle in the bottom left, square in the bottom right. Our next step is going to be to cut on each one of these small little black vertical lines to create the place where we're going to hook our warp thread on. So I'm going to use my scissors and very carefully I'm going to cut on each one of these lines that I've made. Careful to stop right at that horizontal line that I made. And you want to try and get as close as you can to the line without going over. If it goes a tiny bit over, it's okay. Just try and do the best job you can to keep them from going over that horizontal line. Now I like to use the blade in the middle of my scissors because it allows me to cut nice and clean and see where I want to stop. So nice and slow, make your way down all of the tabs until you get to the end. And I'll flip it over here so that you can see those cuts. Now I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So you should have little tabs cut all across the top and the bottom. Before we go any further, I'm going to write my name on the side of the loom. And I'm also going to put the period number that I belong to, just in case my loom gets misplaced. My next step is going to be warping my loom. We're going to be using the warp string that was provided for you and adding it to the loom so that we can weave on it. So the warp thread is going to create the structure that we weave on. So you're going to begin by pulling the little tail out of the top of your warp thread. That will release it and allow it to unravel. And you're going to take that same end, star at the top left corner, and you're going to take that warp thread, flip your cardboard over, and you're going to tape your warp thread right to the middle of the back. If you don't have any more masking tape, you can use Scotch tape or any kind of tape. All of this is going to come off at the end. You're going to take that warp thread, tape it right to the middle of the back of your cardboard, and then you're going to bring it up and tuck it from the back to the front in that little tab right next to the star. And I'm going to bring it down and tuck it nice and tight right in the tab next to the circle. On the back of the loom, I'm going to go behind the first tab and back up the warp and tuck it into the second. I'm going to go behind the third tab and down. So my warp string should be straight up and down. You're going to go behind the tab and across on the front, behind the tab, down on the front, behind the tab on the back, and up the front. And you're going to continue that all the way until you get to the other end. And you want to make sure that your warp strings are tucked nice and low at the base of those tabs. If they're looped around too high on the top of the tab, they could easily pop off, and that would not make weaving very easy. So if you're doing this correctly, you should see straight vertical lines on the top front of your loom, and the back will only have these little dotted lines on the backs of every other tab. If you see long vertical strings on the back of your cardboard, you know that you missed one. You have to undo it and back up. So there's only vertical lines on the front. The back will have these little horizontal, little sideways dashed lines. When you get to the last tab, I'm going to cut your warp string, and I'm just going to tuck the end of this back into that little tab and put this aside in case I need this later. And I'm going to take a little bit more tape and retape my other end. So I have my start end and my finish end, and these little dotted lines going down, and then the front has the vertical warp threads.